Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're just giving a couple of moments to allow people to enter the Zoom meeting. Oh, this is so nice. We see the numbers climbing, so lots of participants today. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing your time with us. The days are getting shorter, so we really appreciate you spending an hour of your daylight time with us today. We will be talking about OARC's most popular foundational tools and templates that we have. These were created in consultation with residents a number of years ago, but we find that they are still very relevant, and this is the feedback that we've received as well. What we've heard is that you'd like to hear more about how to use them in your home, how to use these templates, and how you can customize them to suit the needs of your individual residence council. So my name is Stephanie Ventura. I'm the Director of Education with the Ontario Association of Residence Councils. Together with me today is Melissa Matheson, who is our Home Support and Education Manager. We'll be joined a little bit later in the webinar by Stephen Wenzowski, a resident in Hamilton, also a real member with OARC, so a resident advisor on our advisory board, advisory group, and he'll be helping to answer some questions from the audience as well. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Stephanie, for that introduction. And I'm going to read our land acknowledgement. So together, let us now pause as we acknowledge the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today, from wherever we are virtually participating in today's meeting. Let us take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land we each call home. We do this to affirm our commitment and responsibility to improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. We acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people who call this nation home. Let us now join in a moment of reflection to acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and to consider how each one of us, in our own way, can move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration.
Thanks, Mel. Okay, so some webinar housekeeping for this afternoon. As normally we have during our sessions, the chat box is disabled. However, you are most welcome, and we really look forward to receiving your questions in the question and answer box. Normally we have time at the end of a webinar to answer your questions, but for this webinar, we ask that you pop those questions in the question and answer box as they come up. So we'll be going through some templates together. And if a question comes up relating to a particular part of the template, we'd love to answer those questions on the spot instead of waiting until the end of the webinar. This webinar will be recorded and will be made available on our website and also emailed to all participants along with the slide deck. At the very end of the webinar, there will be a pop-up evaluation survey, and we look forward to receiving your comments, what you enjoyed about it, what we could do better, and any ideas for future webinars.
All right, so for our time together today, we are going to, as Stephanie mentioned, go over some of our resources that we have in our arsenal here at OARC, and we're going to go over our provisional agenda template and really how to use that effectively, and our minute template, and then also understanding our law guide. We'll go through each of those just to give you an idea of how to use those, adapt them. We'll give you some examples of how homes have used them, and to really be able to do it to set your homes up for success.
Thanks, Mel. Okay, so I am going to switch screens and we'll get right into the provisional agenda. So many of you may have already been using this template, or this agenda, and or you may have seen it and modified it to what works for your home, and that's wonderful. We encourage that. So we'll be going through each point, and if you're familiar with our templates, the minutes template corresponds to this provisional agenda. So every point that you see here matches up to a spot on the minutes template. So we'll show you the minutes template and how things can be modified on there, but we're going to spend most of our time here on this provisional agenda because the topics do match.
So as you'll see on the very first one, 1.0 is call to order, welcome, and adoption of the agenda. And this is where we've seen lots of homes use their opening guidelines, as it's really important to frame the meeting. So when you're calling to order and you're welcoming, you really set the tone for supportive discussion. You lay the ground rules for respectful participation in the meeting. I've seen homes, this is where they will actually share their code of conduct, and they will talk about what the code of conduct is and how it would be worked out in the meeting. Some homes add their Indigenous land acknowledgement or a gratitude statement, and some people even, or some homes I've seen have a couple people share what they are grateful for that day, really assisting in building the sense of inclusion, you know, supportive, and really a good vibe to start the meeting. You can also have, you know, on our website for the opening guidelines, we do have a template. So we will be sending out this webinar with the links to each of our resources as well. So you don't worry about that. We will be sending that through. So there are some opening guidelines on our website that how to create them, how to customize it. We also suggest laminating these so that they can be read monthly.
Thanks, Mel. I didn't mention, so I'll just rewind for a minute. This agenda template can be overwhelming. It can, some people have told us that this is overwhelming. There's no way we can get through all of these points in a 1 hour meeting. So this is your reminder to wherever your home is at, that's where you're at. So start where you're at. Try not to be overwhelmed by what you see on this page. Just a quick overview here. If you notice, some of these items are monthly recommendations. So things that are, we recommend that you cover every month and that you are encouraged to uncover every month. It's in the legislation. So in the long-term care legislation, it says that the residence councils can do these things. They have these powers. So some of these are monthly items, others are quarterly items. So if you look at number 5, these items only have to be covered quarterly or upon request. And then there are the annual items. So when you present or when you create this monthly agenda, you don't have to have all of these things on that page that you hand out to residents or that residents receive. Choose the ones that you're going to cover that meeting and go from there. And if you can't cover all of them, that's okay too. What's important here is to remember that, you know, if you have a lively discussion with residents, if residents are engaged in talking about the items that you do cover, that's more important than getting through every single bullet point on the list and having, you know, the facilitator just dictate and rush through every item. If you only cover 2 or 3 items on the list, but it's a meaningful, lively, engaged discussion between the residents, I'd say your meeting was a success. So it's just something to keep in mind as we continue on through this agenda. And I am keeping an eye on the Q&A. I don't see anything yet, so I'm taking that as a good sign.
I also want to mention too, Steph, that
Yeah.
you don't have to have just one meeting a month. Steph and I have talked about this just recently, actually, in giving some feedback to a home. You know, you could have 2 meetings a month and have one meeting where it's just information giving to residents from the home. And then the second meeting can be about what the residents are wanting and to their concerns, or topics of peer support and things like that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be within 1 hour, once a month. You can spread it out.
That's a really great point. Thanks for mentioning that.
Mhm.
Always keep in mind that the resident council meetings belong to the residents. So it's with every decision that's made involving residents in those, coming to an agreement of on everything that's related to the meeting. The long-term care legislation doesn't specify how often meetings have to take place, and that's intentional. It's so that there is that collaborative approach to decision making at the home. So if I am a person who lives in a smaller home, perhaps my meetings look like a weekly check-in. If I'm a person who lives in a larger home with multiple home areas, perhaps there's a home area meeting at a more regular or a more frequent cadence, and the whole home gets together at a different frequency. So it really does depend on the needs of the home, what the residents are asking for. And one way to know if you need more frequent meetings is if your meetings are going over the time that you've specified. So if the agreement is to have an hour-long meeting once a month, but it's consistently going over, then it might be an opportunity to reevaluate the frequency of meetings.
Mhm.
I see something in the chat, so
Yeah, it's asking if it's mandatory to have one meeting every month. That's a great segue. We actually just answered that live. But it isn't mandatory that you do have to have one a month. It's not mandatory, but definitely recommended. And then as we just shared, it's also, if you need, have more than one.
Thank you, Mel. Okay.
Stephanie,
Yes, Stephen.
I think the legislation provides you have to have 10 meetings per year.
So the only thing the legislation mentions about any kind of frequency is that the administrator must meet with the council at a minimum quarterly. So they can meet with the council more frequently if requested, but they're required to meet with the council at least quarterly. Some homes that Mel and I have visited have shared with us that they interpreted that to mean there's only one meeting a quarter, but it doesn't say anything in the legislation about it being required to have monthly meetings. That might be something that your council agreed upon before you joined, or maybe some organizations will actually have a residence council policy on top of what's there in the legislation, what's mandated, what's required. Some homes will have a policy, but even if your home does have a policy, so say your organization, the operator of your home does have a residence council policy, it's still up to the residents to decide on things like frequency, agenda, what's being covered, which guests attend. So even if your organization says, yes, the administrator attends every meeting, they can't actually do that. It's the residents who get to decide who the guests are at their meetings and who attends, how frequent, how long, what's covered, that kind of thing. OARC's role is to make sure that, or to be a knowledge translator so that residents and their supportive team members know what the rights are when it comes to residence council. And if you know what the rights are, then you can make a full and educated decision on how you run your council. Thanks for mentioning that, Stephen. Okay. So we'll go on to 1.1. Wow. This one's pretty straightforward. So I don't think that we need to spend too much time on this one. So reviewing of previously approved minutes. We do recommend that minutes be distributed minutes from the previous meeting be distributed in advance of the meeting. So if there are any questions or any concerns, those can be discussed at the meeting, and you don't have to spend too much time reading through the previous minutes. Some homes will do a quick highlight just to jog people's memories. And that seems to work really well.
Mhm. Same with the 1.2, the business arising from previous minutes. This is really just anything that you weren't able to cover in the last meeting. Are you bringing forward to this meeting, or any updates from business that had arose from the last meeting? So it doesn't even need to be on the agenda if you covered everything the last meeting.
Thank you. I just saw a nice comment in the Q&A. So we have a team that's working with us. So Jen and Melissa, they're working in the background to answer some of the questions that are coming in through the Q&A. And I know that the audience, unless you're looking at the Q&A box, you might not have an opportunity to see some of those great comments that are coming through. So as we go along, we'll be interjecting with those, so you have a chance to hear them as well. We had one attendee say that they have a calendar planning meeting in addition to residence council. So it helps to keep their meetings to an hour. That's a really great suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Next we have 2.0, which is the regular business discussion. And again, these are the monthly items, or, you know, if you meet twice a month, twice a monthly items. And this is the regular business of the council. So 2.1 is the review of responses to concerns and recommendations. If you have any, if your meeting generated, the previous month meeting generated any concerns or any celebratory comments, anything that you wanted your administrator or executive director to respond to, this is when you would review what that response is. And sometimes this gets a little bit confusing because we have heard some councils are not aware that they don't have to accept the response that comes that they receive. So if you have the letter from your administrator responding to your concerns from the previous month, this is the opportunity to read out that response or to share with the council what the response was, keeping in mind that if you don't like the response, or if you need more information about why the response is what it is, you don't have to accept the response. You can go back to your administrator and invite further dialogue so that there's a better understanding of why the response is what it is. It's not to say that every recommendation or concern that residence council brings up will automatically be implemented, because the home is working under different limitations and constraints. But if you're not understanding why a response was what it was, then you most certainly can go back to your administrator and invite that further dialogue.
And then we have 2.2, which is the Resident Bill of Rights review. A lot of homes that we visit and a lot of residence councils, what they'll do is they'll review 2 or 3 resident rights, so that you don't have to review all of them every single meeting, but maybe pull out or go over every week, or sorry, every month, do another one and review 2 or 3, and really not only just read them out, but also explain what does that mean, how does that play out in your home. A lot of people use the Community Legal Education Ontario Clio book, and it has some great examples that you can use. So I know a lot of residence council use that in order to share with resident rights.
Thanks, Mel. Something I used to do with the Resident Bill of Rights was at the beginning of the year, have a planning meeting and decide which rights you would cover at each meeting so you don't miss any, or work with the council to decide which ones are really important and meaningful at the time for the home, that they would like to have further explained. And Mel and I have also been at some homes where there wasn't, the council didn't want to go through the resident bill of rights review every month. They felt that, you know, the posters on the wall, anyone can read it if they would like. So we're not going to spend time during the meeting to go through the resident bill of rights. So again, the council decides what is covered at each meeting. This is a recommendation from OARC based on what's in the Long-Term Care Act, the Fixing Long-Term Care Act. We want you to know all the information, all the topics you're entitled to cover, so that you get to make the decision on what's important for your home and what's not. In terms of Residents' Bill of Rights, if it is possible to cover this in a different way. So one attendee mentioned that they have a planning meeting separate from the Residents' Council, and that helps to save some time during the monthly meetings. Perhaps you could have something similar for Residents' Bill of Rights. Maybe there's an opportunity during the month. Maybe it's a Resident Bill of Rights discussion group, and then that group, a member from the group, simply comes back to the resident council meeting and says, hey, we covered this, this, and this. You could even have a resident bill of rights be the theme for the home for the month. Just like I think at some organizations, some schools will have, you know, the positive characteristic of the month or virtue of the month. Maybe you could have a resident bill of rights for the month.
That's a great way to incorporate it. The importance is that the residents know their rights and what it actually means. So having real life observations or examples. So if an attendee in our chat asked, can we explain more of what you do when going over the Bill of Rights review? Do you read it out loud and do you chat about it? That would be our recommendation, is definitely to read it out loud, give real life examples of what that right would be, and then also have a discussion about it. And like Stephanie said, if it takes up a lot of discussion time in your meeting, you can have those in another meeting or do it in other meaningful ways in the home.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the list is 2.3, the treasurer's report. So we know that not every home has a treasurer, and that homes are moving away from the traditional executive model of councils. So you are most welcome to change the language on there to reflect what actually happens in your home. So suppose your council doesn't have a bank account or doesn't have their own funds that they manage. You know, some homes who are governed by a board of directors or a foundation, the foundation will allocate funds to the residents' council, so that council gets to decide what they use the funds on, but they're not necessarily responsible for managing the funds. So you can update that 2.3 to reflect the situation in your home. If your home is governed by a board of directors or a foundation, or you have a different way of managing and deciding on financial council finances, then you could enter that. It could read something like, you know, this board finances or residents council funds or fundraising, whatever the situation is at your home.
Stephanie,
Yes, Stephen.
I'd like to make a suggestion. At our home, as of this year, we have the bank statement, monthly bank statement attached to the agenda for the council meetings. So that way people can look at it and peruse it.
Yeah, that's what I used to do too. I would just get the bank statement, just like you said, and read it out, the ins, the outs. If there were any outs, match up receipts to that, and also identify in that section when and how those purchases were approved. So anytime funds leave the bank account, there needs to be an accountability there. So this ties into the making decisions for your council. So you would have to look back and find out how your council votes or decides on where funds will be spent, how funds are approved or not approved, how recommendations are brought forward to spend council funds. So these are all things that need to be considered in the treasurer's report. It can be as simple as a note I always used to have was, as agreed upon in this meeting, as agreed upon by council at this meeting with the date, council has financed flowers for outside the building.
Mhm.
And it can be as simple as that, as long as you attach those receipts. And again, your organization may have a process in place that that works really well. So again, this isn't meant to be prescriptive. It's meant to let you know what you can do, and then you customize it for your home.
We also have heard a lot of from homes that they are having a bit of difficulty with their banking and the finances. And Stephanie, someone in the chat just asked if there is any updates on treasurer's report via banks for authorized residents to sign off checks. So before the IB required, the residents don't have this anymore. So we know, and we have heard from many homes that the sign off with the banks is getting more difficult. You're needing, the driver's license or passport or some sort of identification. And one of the things I just wanted to mention that I have shared with a couple of homes is you can use what is on Point Click Care. If you use Point Click Care and those systems, you can actually use some of the information that they have there and have your executive director write a note and to be able to give that to the bank to say that they are who they are and that they can sign off on this. But please reach out to us if you do have more of those kind of questions, because that is a very, very in-depth conversation. And we at OARC are looking at doing something in the new year to address the finances as well.
Yeah, in terms of the legislation, there isn't anything in the legislation that says residents can or cannot have a bank account. What it does say is that residents have the right, one of the powers of the Residents' Council is that they can fundraise and sponsor activities and events in the home, for residents. So by virtue of them having the right and the power to fundraise, that would necessitate that they have somewhere to store those funds or some process for managing those funds. We do have a fact sheet on finances and a webinar, a previously recorded webinar on finances that we will link for you to be sent out with the recording of this webinar, because it is a big topic, as Mel said, and we have to get through the agenda. I'll just take a quick look here at the Q&A and see if there's something that we can answer before we move on. Lots of great sharing about how individual councils do their thing when it comes to money. So one attendee said that money spent is only takes place after the resident council meeting. They discuss which purchases will be made, the council approves, and then the money spent will show up in the following resident council month minutes. And I answered the question. There's a question about, is it mandatory for a resident council to have a bank account? Again, no, it's not. It's not mandatory for them to have a bank account. Some homes will store the money in different ways or manage the funds in different ways, but the residents do have the right to fundraise, to plan and sponsor activities of their choosing for residents. So if your residents' council says, we would like to fundraise for this, they have the right to do that. And the home needs to help them do that.
And have access to their money.
Right.
Yeah.
Steph,
Yes.
we have an account here.
Mhm.
And what we've done is one member of the administration is the signer of the checks, and a member of the resident council also signs the checks. So I get to review what's being spent because it comes in front of me because I signed the checks.
Mm. So it's another balance. There's a check and balance there.
Mhm. Yeah, and so there are a lot of questions in the chat that are very specific to your particular situation in your home. So in this webinar, unfortunately, we can't address those individual questions, but as I mentioned, we'll be sending out the finances fact sheet and a previously recorded webinar, and encourage you to please keep an eye out on our publications, on our newsletters. As Mel mentioned, we are working on this currently to provide some more guidance on this.
Mhm.
Okay. I think that's you, Mel, 2.4.
Yeah, so committee reports. So there's two types of committees that residents can be involved in their home, and the home, the residents council subcommittees and your long-term care home committees. So the home committees is the organizational structure of the home, and some of these are required by the legislation to have a resident on those committee meetings or committees at the meetings, like the Continuous Quality Improvement Committee is required to have someone involved on that. So this is typically where they would bring a report from that committee or give updates and provide anything that they would like to ask questions to be able to bring back to the committee as well. So it's a two-way kind of conversation. And then you have residents council subcommittees, and these are formed as residents discuss issues and decide to form a group. And these can be really anything that your home residents council would like to do. You could have a welcoming committee that, when there's new people moving into your home, you have a committee that will welcome them. You could do a dietary committee, a memorial committee. I've heard, when people were saying that they do their program, a meeting on a different date, that could also be a committee that does the programs, reviewing. There's, multitude of kind of committees that you could actually do as a subcommittee with the council. And both of these committees provide excellent avenues for residents to really participate significantly in their home and in different ways. But this is just where you would report on what's happening at those committee meetings.
Thank you. Okay, and here's the moment you've all been waiting for, the home area updates and discussion. So this is the part of on the agenda where you get all the lovely comments and about what's working really well in the home, what residents would like the home to know is working really well. It's also where you get, some concerns. Where do things need to be improved? These are captured here. So this part 2.5 is a continuation of 2.1. So 2.1 is where you review the responses to the concerns that were brought forward in the previous meeting. 2.5 is for new concerns. This is the page. This is the part of the template, the part of the minutes, the part of the meeting that is presented to the administrator or executive director to respond to. So this is where you want to capture those ideas. And sometimes it's quiet, a lot of food comments that usually takes up some time. So that's another way to save time, is separate that food committee from residents council, or it will eat up a big chunk of your time.
No pun intended.
I had to throw one in there. Yes, so you can do the food committee at the start of the meeting or at the end of the meeting or a separate day altogether. In our experience, the food committees that run the best and really, really well are the ones where the food services manager is actually there facilitating that meeting. So they hear directly from residents rather than having the resident council assistant be the intermediary, or the administrator be the middle person. So some ways to generate some discussion in this section. There's one way to do it is just to say, okay, does anyone have any concerns, or does anyone have anything they'd like to talk about? But also, it's a good time to remind people what that department does. You may have new residents who it's their first time attending the meeting. And something like environmental services not everyone might know what that means. So you can say something like, Danny, he is the manager for the environmental services department. Environmental services, that's the department that covers laundry and housekeeping. Just to jog people's memories and to give them that extra information so that they can then share effectively. We've heard from some, well, this is unrelated, so I don't want to confuse things, but we have heard from some homes where they'll invite a different department manager to each meeting, but that's something that is set up in advance with the resident council approval. So you can put a face to the department and get to know more people in the home. Okay, this is a big one, so I'm going to take a look over at the chat or at the Q&A and see if there's anything related to this. Okay, Francine says that they have a resident council and a food committee meeting every month with the food committee and food service manager and dietitian are present. Wow, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, lovely. Okay, so we'll move on to the next one, community involvement discussion.
Sure. So this is where this is another one, 3.0 is, does it need to be in the agenda if something has occurred, or take it out of the agenda if it hasn't been occurring? And this is just really where OARC, we encourage residents to become active in your communities outside of your home whenever possible. This could be, maybe you guys were involved in the Christmas parade this year. So this is somewhere with community involvement, you'd have that discussion for the months leading up to it. Are you working with I've heard of one home that we know of, the town council, working with them and the MP to secure the bus stop, and they had a bus stop across from them, but they didn't have a crosswalk to get there. So just getting those sort of things, that would be a community involvement. So having those updates and discussions in that time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would also add on here, if there were any students or any schools that were working with your home that you were aware of.
That's a good point.
I would add that we're so happy to have students from Humber College with us for the next 3 months or something like that, or even volunteers that you have in the home. We have a volunteer who's coming in and playing the piano once a month on this day. Ways that you show the connection to the people who live in the home and the community where they came from.
And also sharing.
Yeah,
I just thought about that too, when you do the St. Joseph dogs coming in too, that's working with the community, dating when the dogs are going to be coming in, or the animals. And then in the chat, they also just said, are intergenerational programs included? And I think, that'd be a great place to talk about when you're having the intergenerational programs, in what they are, and how the residents can be involved.
Yeah, this all stems from this part of the agenda. The reason why it's on here, it all stems from one of the powers of the council, and that's to be involved in the community, to participate in the life of the community. So it's not that residents, move into long-term care and that's it. They're no longer part of their community. They are a part of their community. They have the right to be part of their community. We've heard some homes say, oh, there's a new grocery store or something opening up outside down the street. So they might involve that. If a new business in the area is coming in to meet residents, or ways to reach out to businesses in the community, ways to reach out to faith-based organizations. It's just ways to show that you are a resident, you're living in your long-term care home, but the only thing that's changed is your address, not the person that you are, and you are still a member of the community. So celebrate that and encourage that in your home. Continue to be part of that community. And note it down here, share it with your residence council to encourage and inspire others to do the same.
So you could have this on your monthly agenda every month or just on specific months when you would like to address it or provide updates or provide discussion.
Thank you. Okay, the next one is number 4, and this one is all about the long-term care inspection reports. So did you know, for those on the call today or on the webinar today, did you know that the Residence Council homes are required, mandated in the Fixing Long-Term Care Homes Act to share all inspection reports with the council? Not only does the home have to share the inspection report with the council, they also have to share with the council what they're doing to correct any deficiencies that were found during that inspection. So when we talk to residents, they seem quite surprised that that this is one of the mandated activities or powers of the Residence Council, but it absolutely is. And we're not talking about getting into the nitty-gritty personal private details. We're talking about sharing the public report that's available for anyone to access, and taking some time to explain to the residents what happened. This is a requirement. So when there's an inspection in your home, a public copy is sent to the attention of the Residence Council. There is a copy that goes to the Residence Council and one to the home for posting to the public. So if you are a member of the Residence Council and you have not been receiving the inspection reports for your home, you can ask your administrator or someone in your home, your council assistant perhaps, why that is. It's possible that you live in a fantastic home that hasn't had an inspection in 3 years, but it's unlikely because the ministry has hired so many new inspectors, and their mission is to visit all of the long-term care homes. So in my experience, in Mel's experience, we have not seen a home that hasn't had an inspection in the last year. So if you haven't seen that public report, if you haven't had that opportunity to discuss with your home, it might be a good idea to bring that up at your next Residence Council. Okay, I'm just taking a look over at the chat. Someone asked, should we give every member a copy of reports or one general one? So it's not so much about handing out documents as much as it is ensuring that people understand that what has happened. So personally, the inspection report, I find them difficult to read sometimes. So it would be my preference to have my administrator come and share with me, or the director of care or any other team member in the home who understands the situation, to come and explain what happened, what the details of the report are, and provide that opportunity to ask questions. So what's required is that it's posted somewhere in the home and that a copy is shared with the council. So it's up to the home, up to the residents in the home, up to the council assistant, how that information is shared. There's no prescriptive of way to do that. All it says is that it must be shared with the council.
Yeah, and also the action plan. So how, this may be what happened, but this is how the home is making sure that it doesn't happen again, and the steps that they are putting in place for that. So that's really important to hear, I think. When you hear that there's an inspection and something happened, sometimes we don't get to hear, well, how did the home fix it? And I think that's the important piece.
Thank you. Okay, so we've gone through the items that are monthly or standing agenda items, and the remaining items on this agenda are quarterly and annual items. I do recognize that it's 2:45, and this has been a lively discussion that I'd like to continue. We don't want to cut off any of the information or miss any of the information that we had planned to share with you today. So if we see that the time is getting really close, we may ask for your patience and help with selecting a second, maybe this is a two-part webinar where we meet again in the next couple of weeks or even after the holidays and continue this great discussion. So for the quarterly items, we talked about this a bit earlier. There are two that are outlined in the legislation, and one of them is the administrator's report and consultation. The administrator, along with any other guest, can attend the council meetings if the council invites them, if the council requests them to attend. But the administrator, on top of that, is required to meet with the council at a minimum quarterly basis. So what is this report and consultation? It's an opportunity for the administrator to get advice from the residence council on any issues that are arising in the home. I guess, let me just backtrack for a second again. For these quarterly items and for the annual items, at the start of the year, something that we recommend is for you to have one of these planning meetings with the council and decide when you're going to address these things. So it doesn't get to November or December and, oh, we haven't done all of these things. So in consultation with your home's administrator and with the council, for 5.1, at the start of the year, you can work together to decide what that schedule is going to look like, and then plan around it. Same for the continuous quality improvement report. That committee in the home is already existing in your home. So following the schedule that they've already set out, you can add those dates in there as well. And the same thing for the annual council items. There are 7 of them. If you break up the dining and snack review, you could probably have 8, and that gives you a little bit of wiggle room. So if at the beginning of the year, so in January or end of the year, you sit down and decide when you're going to tackle home's financial statement, we recommend doing it in the spring, early summer, because the fiscal year ends in March. The long-term care fiscal year ends in March. Same with the detailed allocation of funding. Your home likely already has a schedule for when the resident and family experience survey is released. So jotting those times down so that you're aware when they're going to take place, and any invitations that need to go out for outside people to attend or guests to attend can be sent out in advance and approved on in advance. We've been talking a lot about guests and about who attends the council, the residence council meetings. And I just wanted to address a question that came through in the chat about family members attending resident council meetings. So residence council is separate from family council. There is also a family council, or there can be a family council in your home. It's not required like the residence council is. Every home must have a residence council. Every home can have a family council if the families in the home would like to have one. The family council is also an opportunity to bring up concerns on behalf of residents. So we were working with some family council members a few months ago, and we were surprised, and they were surprised to find out that resident concerns can be brought through the family council. There was this idea that family council was only for family concerns. So we're trying to highlight that as a family member, you have the opportunity to be part of the family council. And so if your person in long-term care, if your person doesn't attend the resident council for whatever reason, you can still bring forward their concerns to the family council. That's not the focus of this webinar today. We do have documents and fact sheets and information on how to work with family councils. But I just wanted to address that because we get that question a lot. Yeah. Okay. So let's take a look at the chat here. Question about, this one's interesting. Are you reviewing all spending in the home or just recreation spending? So residence council, while it is normally the programs or recreation manager who, or someone from the recreation team who's assigned or appointed to work with the residence council isn't a recreation program. It is a mandatory advisory committee, external advisory group made up only of residents who help advise the home. So yes, you promote it on your recreation calendar. It's a lot of the same people who work in recreation, who work with the council as well, but the council is separate. So the question about reviewing just recreation spending, no, the answer is no. They would be reviewing the entire home's financial statement. So the same statement that the home would be giving to the director, that they would be submitting to the director. Residents have access to see that. They have the right to see those funds, to see where funding is being allocated. So 6.2, that could be, okay, here's the money that we've received from, or here's the funding that we've received from the ministry in the nursing envelope, in the programs and support services envelope, in all of the envelopes. The residents have the right to see how much the home is receiving from the ministry. They also have the right to see how much funding is received from the residents paying their accommodation fees. Any funding that comes into the home, the residents have the right to see that and to ask questions about it.
Yes.
So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the detailed allocation of funding. I hope
And
that
just as a clarification too, so the treasurer's report with regular business discussion under 2.3 is the residence council's treasurer's report. And then under the annual residence council agenda items, the home's financial statement is home's financial. So they are two separate things, just to clarify that.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good point. Okay, so the next few items on the annual council agenda items for review are the resident and family caregiver experience survey. So most homes, or every home, it's a requirement to do an annual survey. Where the residence council gets involved is in two places, well, three places. The first one is deciding how that survey is going to be shared with residents. So is it, a paper copy that residents fill out? Is it electronic? What options are available, languages that are available? So residents need to be involved in deciding how the survey will be disseminated. The other area where residents are involved in this is actually filling out the survey and seeing what the results of the survey are once the survey has been complete. And lastly, helping the home or hearing from the home what the plans are to address what has come through, what's been identified through the survey. So the survey is a collaborative process between the residence council and the home as well. So something to keep in mind, and an annual requirement to have that discussion with the council. Again, start where you're at. If right now, your survey has already taken place, there wasn't an opportunity to work with the council, you can still do the other parts. So, for next time, bring this forward to your home's leadership team. It's possible that that the way you're doing it could be improved or could be changed if that's something the residents are looking at. But yeah, if your survey's already been done, you have the results, there's still an opportunity to share that with the council if you haven't already, and have a discussion about what the results mean. I went rogue. So we have Stephen on the call, and Stephen is, I mentioned he works with OARC and he's a resident at a home in Hamilton. Stephen always jokes that he goes rogue when he's on these engagements, and I just went a little rogue and did a few sections that didn't belong to me. So
That's
Mel,
okay. That's
I-
okay.
over to
I
you.
thought you were going to continue, but I can definitely. So the resident information package. This is another one that residents are, able to, as a council, put together something to put into that package. So when anyone moves into a long-term care home, they are received a package of all of the information about the home, and residents council can put information in that package. And also, earlier when we talked about committees, you could put together a committee of people who want to work on that brochure. So bringing up the fact that, at a council meeting, you can bring up the brochure, putting together a brochure or an information to put in this package. You could ask if people are interested in putting that together. You can ask what would be important on in that brochure at those meetings. And then you could do a separate committee meeting on putting together that package and then bring it back to the council to have them approve it, to give, provide feedback on that before it goes into the package. So that's another way that you can have involvement from residents in a different way with the information package. We also on our website have a template as well for brochure if you do need some guidance with that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and with the resident info package, your home or the organization that your home belongs to may already have a set resident information package. It's important for current residents to review that to make sure that it's accurate. So the resident experience is so important in this because, as someone who's working on the home side, on the management side, you may think that the resident information package is accurate. Everything that's in there is right. It's come from perhaps from your corporate office or your head office, but the resident experience of what's in that package doesn't reflect what is outlined there. So always important to get the current residents who've been in the home now, they've received this on their first day, perhaps they haven't read it, or such an overwhelming day, but residents who have been in the home for a few years or a few months and understand how the home works, having them review that resident info package through that lens is really important and helps improve the quality of, it's a quality improvement initiative as well.
Absolutely. We have a couple questions about it, about the package in the chat. So one question is, we have a brochure that goes in the admin package, which is what we are talking about. So the administration has a big package that they give to every person who moves into long-term care. And they're asking, do they have a say on what goes inside the residence council brochure in the admin package?
Residents absolutely have a say in what goes in the resident council brochure. And whether or not that's included in the admin package. There's some questions about funding for the packages as well. So this resident information package, this is a requirement in the legislation for the home to provide to all new residents. What number 6.4 is requesting or reminding councils to do is that they have the opportunity to review the package. So it's not that the resident council has to come up with this package, it's that they are reviewing the package that the home is required to produce.
And if you want to put any info in about your council, you can. Right. Yeah. Sorry to cut you off, Steph.
No, you didn't, you augmented or added. I see Stephen's on mute and I don't want to call you out if you had to step away. But there is a section here on dining and snack review that I don't think Mel and I can do justice to it as well as Stephen can. So I'll keep an eye on his microphone and see if he's around. But in the meantime, let's just go to 6.6 and 6.7. And I do recognize that it is 3 p.m. So if anyone needs to drop off at this time, please do so. This is being recorded and we'll send out the recording to everyone. I think we have about 5 minutes. So appreciate your willingness to stay if you can stay. The Residence Council Assistant. So it is an annual requirement for the Residence Council to review the role of the council assistant. Who is in that role? So one of the questions in the chat asked, does the resident council assistant always have to be the recreation manager? And the answer is no. The Fixing Long-Term Care Act says that the home should appoint a resident council assistant, but this assistant must be acceptable to the council. So what this means is if the council has an assistant and it's just not working out, or they feel that there's another team member in the home who would be a perfect fit for assisting the council has the right to make that request. They also have the right on an annual basis to review the person who's in the role of the council. And this doesn't have to be a big drawn out process. This could be however your home would like to do it. The way that I've done it in the past is, we would designate a month for this to take place. Normally we would put September because it was resident council month. So at the September meeting, the council would decide if they wanted me to continue helping them, being their assistant, or if it was time for me to step away. So I would step out of the room and I would say, it's time to review my role with the council. And I'll step out, have your discussion, let me know when I can come back into the room. And, they would tell me what their decision was. So that's how we did it. We would document it in the minutes. The council, has acclaimed or appointed Stephanie for 1 more year. That's how we would do it. Other homes we've heard take the opportunity to do a bit of a review of the person. So highlights, things they were proud of, things they really enjoyed. So it really depends on how your home wants to do it. But what's important is for you to know that this is an annual requirement to have that discussion.
Yeah, and also just to mention that earlier when we were talking, there was a question about, does the assistant have to be a recreation staff? And no, they don't. It can be any staff member in the home, and it is, as Steph said, just a negotiated, it's somebody that the council is agreeable to have. And then our last 6.7 is the home's mission statement. So this is actually to be revised as necessary and redeveloped every 5 years. And, on here, we would recommend that you note the date that it's been previously revised or took place and put that as a reminder to really revisit it. And this is also something that can be worked on with your council and the administrator. And we have a really exciting story in our upcoming seasons about a council doing the mission statement review and how they were involved very intimately with creating their new mission statement with the administrator. So it is an article that is coming up in Seasons, which our Seasons magazine is coming out in a couple weeks. And so Huron Lodge is sharing with us and with you guys how they did that. So it's a great example of how a home was involved in that. So please read through that and how you can also work with your management team and your administrator to create your mission statement as well.
Thanks, Mel. I'm going to reach out to Stephen if he's there. Are you there, Stephen? Give us a sign. Okay, we'll wait for him to chime in if he's around. He might be having a snack. It might be his snack time at this time. So dining and snack review, this could be its own webinar.
I see the mute off.
Okay, I'll just say one more thing. It will be its own webinar. We will be talking about this during March, which is Nutrition Month. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Stephen.
Welcome back, yes.
So what can you tell us about the dining and snack review? Do you put this on your agenda at your residence council? Does this take place? It's an annual requirement, but how do you do it?
We do a food committee
Mm,
and we do it just before the resident council. And that is always well attended.
Mm.
So we go through, if there's a holiday coming up, like what do you want for Victoria Day, Christmas, things like that. Changing the menu after what, a quarterly period or trimester, I forget what it is. We pick out what we would like and what we'd like to drop.
mm,
That's important.
yeah, that's a good point, adding it to the food committee. And truthfully, the food services provider in your home, they also are required to do these things. So they will be reaching out to the council. They should be reaching out to the council to have the items in 6.5 covered, because they also have to show that they're doing these things. Dining and snack review, as Stephen mentioned, assisting with the menu planning. So some homes have a spring summer menu, a fall winter menu, reviewing that before it is implemented. So as Stephen mentioned, you can say, residents have an opportunity to say, yes, we like this, no, we don't like this, and to make any substitutions that make sense and that are accessible. And then the meal and snack time review, we recently had a resident reach out to us asking about this. Their food services manager wanted them to sign off on something saying that the council gave approval for the meal and snack times. And so the resident reached out to us because they actually didn't have much information about what was being asked from them, and they didn't want to put the council in a bad position. So they reached out to us to ask, and what this is for meals and snack times, in collaboration with the home's administrator, the food service manager, and the council, snack times can be decided on or reviewed. So suppose, you have your snack nourishment cart comes around at 1:30 p.m. We have heard homes requesting that, or suggesting that, our lunch time is from 12 to 1. Having these nourishment cart come around at 1:30 really doesn't do it for us. So can we adjust that time, shift that time to a little bit later? And also talking about what's on that snack cart. So do you have the options that are required on there? Do you just have cranberry juice at every pass or water at every pass? Is the home providing options that the residents like and that work for residents? Okay, surprisingly, not so many questions about the food,
Yeah.
but you must all be experts on the food because that is a monthly topic.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to the residence council assistant, 'cause there was a comment in the chat that they actually have their administrator and CEO review the resident council assistant with the residents when they do their report. And
Mm,
they come in, they do their report, they ask their resident council assistant to leave the room, and they actually do the evaluation with them, which I thought that's a great idea. Mhm.
yeah, thanks so much for sharing that.
Mhm.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so we've gotten through the oh, well, almost. Let's go to 7.7.0. Next meeting. It's so important to share with residents, with people who attend the council meetings, when the next meeting is going to be. So some homes have a predetermined schedule, last Tuesday of every month, first Friday of every month, always at the same time, same place. Other councils will negotiate or decide on a time at the end of each meeting. So we do recommend having a regularly scheduled, consistent schedule so that residents can plan their other activities and appointments and engagements around the council meetings if they like to attend. And lastly, the adjournment, Mel.
Yeah, so this is just basically, you know, you have closing remarks. You can, actually, we have closing remarks as well on our website with some ways just to kind of end off the meeting as well in a very positive light with some encouragement and good thoughts for the next month and what the residents are going to be off doing. And yeah, so it's just really ending off that meeting and that somebody would second it, and then you'd write that down that they would have agreed to end the meeting.
Thanks, Mel. Okay, so friends, we're at 3:11 and we got through our hefty agenda. Someone in the chat commented that this is how long it takes their meetings. This is how long it takes for them to get through their meetings as well. So appreciate that understanding and empathy. You know how it is when things go over a little bit. And we appreciate you hanging in there and sticking with us. So I'm sure you've realized we only got through the agenda portion of this this webinar. So please stay tuned for details to follow for the other sections that we wanted to cover with you today. Again, the template that we wanted to look at ties directly into this agenda. It just shows you what the template looks like. So
yeah.
With that, we thank you again so much and look forward to reading your evaluation comments and answering more of your questions and hearing some of your fantastic ideas. This was so nice to hear all of the great things that you all are doing in your homes. Wishing you all a happy holiday season. I'll have to paraphrase one of our resident leaders, Jim, who said that, I'm going to completely mess it up, that be the light. You know, in these dark times, the days getting shorter and other things going on, continue to be the light for people in your home and for yourself. Continue to light the way. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you, Mel, Jen, and Melissa for holding it down in the background. And we will see you soon.
Thank you, Steph. Have a good one.